Are you looking for a way to help your brick-and-mortar business drive more traffic and increase your sales? Look no further than the Receipt Paper Podcast. In this podcast, Joanne and Kyle provide their sage advice on how to make your brick-and-mortar store the hottest spot in town. Whether you're just launching a new business or trying to grow an existing one, these informative episodes will leave you inspired. In each episode, Joanne and Kyle take on a different topic related to running a successful business. They offer practical tips based on their own experience as owners of multiple brick-and-mortar locations. So whatever challenges you're facing, they have actionable advice for you. From finding a location and executing your build-out, to merchandising and customer experience, to sales and marketing, Joanne and Kyle have you covered. With helpful advice from these experienced entrepreneurs, you are sure to learn how to increase your sales and have your business running out of receipt paper in no time. Let's dive right in.
Welcome back to episode number 26 of the Receipt Paper Podcast. My name is Kyle Strubing. I am one half of the dynamic duo here. I'm here with my wife and business partner and life partner, Joanne Strubing. Jojo, baby, how are we doing today?
We are good. We are chugging along this week. If you've been listening to our episodes, you know we've been rebranding our business and we are in full swing still. And I know that Kyle wishes it was moving a little faster, but he's doing a phenomenal job doing a lot of construction and building things. So it's been fun, but we have been busy.
Yeah, a lot of finish work, not a lot of slapping paint up. That's kind of over with, and the big bulky things, it's more of like tiny little cuts for trim pieces and this, that, and the other. And, not that I'm great at that, or not that, I know we talk about the customers don't necessarily care or whatever, but I still want it to look decent, and it's kind of one of our centerpieces and stuff. And we'll post pictures of the rebrand, but it's yeah, you'd think that it would be a 2-hour job or whatever, and it turns into a 6, and just multiple Home Depot and Lowe's stops.
Yeah.
It's been great, but I've got some good help. The employee or our part-timer that we hired has really stepped up.
Yeah.
Like, she's
Yeah.
been fantastic. So, you know,
Yeah, she's been great. But I've been really impressed with you. I was telling Kyle, 5 years ago when this was our first location ever, and I remember him building the counter back then, and he did a great job, but it was a struggle. I think it was the first time you'd ever really dove into a big project like that, and now he's whipping things up in the garage that are looking amazing, and so it shows you that you can learn a lot over the years.
I've
And
acquired a lot of tools
yeah,
over the last 5 years too. And I've seen,
yeah.
you've asked questions. I got, he's one of my good friends, but he's we call him my cousin Blair comes through and helps out. And he kind of is there for more of mental support. And so I can run ideas by and stuff. And I think you get an eye for certain things too after a while, and you see, how things are cut and done or whatever. But it's funny
Yeah.
because I talked to my father, who's a master carpenter, and it's like, oh no, you just do this, 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 and this. And I was like, well, yeah, it's not even that easy, Dad. But okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm looking forward to getting going. I'm looking forward to the rebrand. And really, it's nice because it's bringing us back to really this topic, right?
Yeah.
We think about 5 years ago when we were negotiating our first lease.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the topic we're at today. This episode, as all episodes, are brought to you by Tap Mango. Like I say, every episode, Tap Mango is the #1 marketing tool that we use, that we get the best ROI on. And as everybody knows, that is the key. I know we had somebody on was it last week or a couple weeks ago in one of the brick-and-mortar academies or whatever, but Tap Mango explained a whole bunch
Yeah, they
about
did
it.
a
So just talk
demo
about it.
and they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a free demo, go to masterbrickandmortar.com/chatmango. Awesome royalty and rewards program. But I'm super excited about today's
Yeah.
topic. It is one that not a lot of owners spend a lot of time on. And I don't think there's a lot of information out there about what you should be looking for or what you should be negotiating in your commercial lease. And a lot of people find these things out after they've already signed a 5 or 10 year lease. And quite frankly, they're SOL. So if you are in the location process, we actually did an episode, it was number 3, on exactly what to look for when you're looking for a location. So I highly recommend you jump back over to that episode if you are just starting out, so you know what types of things to look for in a location to set you up for success. This episode today is really your cheat sheet for once you've found a location and you want to kick off those negotiating those terms for that lease, what exactly you should be even negotiating. Commercial leases are different than renting a residential property, and there's a lot of things that we learned the hard way. By the time we got to our 3rd location, we knew exactly what we were wanting to ask for, but it's not always clear even how these things work. So we're going to walk you through how they kind of set up commercial leases and what all you should be asking for and negotiating, and what's even out there for you to be negotiating.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, you don't know what you don't know, and that's the toughest thing. I know our first one, and this goes back to the conversation of, do you go with an agent or not? And it was nice with us because he was able to do that. But we're going to kind of bridge the gap for some of that today, at least with the nitty-gritty and the details on this lease. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for that for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So if you're working with a commercial real estate agent, they should be walking you through these things, but they don't always. So stay with us and listen through all this. You might hear something that you are not listening or haven't heard before. So today we're going to walk you through 16 crucial things to consider when signing your commercial lease. Not all of these may apply to you, but they are things that you should consider. And I just want to put this out there. I know negotiating for some of you can seem really daunting, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go through this, but I promise you, your business is worth fighting for. This is a long-term relationship that you're signing up for with a landlord for 5, 7, 10 years, or even 3 years, whatever your lease duration may be. But
Now is the time to do it. Yeah. I
don't
mean,
be afraid,
yeah.
put some, fight for what you want, and it just never hurts to ask, ask for these things, and you never know what the response
Because
was.
you're going to be locked in. I mean, you're once it's signed, once it's done, and you're in there, it's in. So now's the time to do it. Now's the time to ask. Now's the time to kind of set the tone for how the interactions between you and them are going to be over the next 5, 10 years. It's super important for sure.
Yeah.
At least have those conversations and ask questions.
Right. All right, so bust out your pen and paper or pull out your notes on your phone. We are going to move through these a little quickly since there's a lot of them. But number 1 is the length of your lease. So like we said, commercial leases are typically longer. When you're signing a residential lease, you're usually looking at 1 or 2 years. But when you sign a commercial lease, usually the landlord will start you out at like 5 years. So it's important for you to consider, what is the growth plans for your business? Are you going to want to stay in that location long term? Are you in a risky business that you're not really sure where it's going to be in 5 years? Maybe you need to look at asking for a 3-year term. You need to think about these things, but also know that the longer the lease, the more negotiating power you typically have.
Exactly.
So you can use that to your advantage to say, okay, we will move forward with the 5 years, but we want X, Y, and Z in return. So use that to your advantage, but really take the time to think about where your business is going to be.
Yeah, they will use that, and you can use that as a lever. They want to get you locked in for as long as they possibly can. That way, they don't have to mess with that unit.
Yeah.
Right? It's less work for them. They have different things on their back, and I think sometimes it's kind of important to understand where they're coming from and what, I guess, KPIs or metrics that your landlord and obviously if it's a smaller outfit, it won't be that as much, but there were a couple eye-opening things, I think, when we renegotiated some of our leases that was like, oh, okay. And we kind of understood their motivations a little bit much. Like things of like, when we renewed, like it had to be more, right? So that they could show growth essentially to their investors was one thing that they were doing. So they want to lock, point being, I've got off track a little bit there, but the point being is they want to lock you into that. So if you're comfortable with that, don't just go ahead and do that, right? Use it as leverage, get something for them, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. And
Yeah.
it is, I think it's important to know that they want to get you into that longer one.
Yeah. But you are locked into these leases. So
Right.
just know, especially if you're a new business owner, sometimes you'll be signing this lease under your personal name rather than your business name, which I highly recommend you push for that business name, not your personal name. But know that you are going to be held liable for paying that lease. And these rent costs typically are not cheap. So like I know when we first signed our first lease, we were in an industry that we didn't know what the legalities were going to be in 3 years. It was the CBD industry. So we only went with the 3-year lease because we weren't comfortable with that. So so know that it's okay to do a smaller lease to make give you that peace of mind and
But
not
then
take
again,
interest.
for our third lease at the time, right, we went with a longer thing
Yeah.
because we had proof of concept. We were doing pretty well at the other two stores. So we knew that we could probably carry this out. And it was nice. So the things were fluid. They were willing to negotiate with us and give us the things to get us in. And we really just liked the location, to be honest with you, too. So that was another big thing. That was another big thing.
Yeah.
Did you want to move on to the second one?
Yeah, let's so the second one is your base rent, but before we dive into negotiating that, can you explain how they set up the leases with the base rent and the triple net cost and how that works?
So yeah, your base rent is based off of X amount of dollars. Typically, they say it's in your area per square footage, and that's kind of the negotiation. Well, Papel is at, let's say, $5 a square foot or whatever, and that refers to what it is per square foot per month. And they all want to leverage this and that and the other, and it's a comp, really,
Mhm.
is how they go about that. Um,
And then you have your
and then
triple
you have your
net
triple
cost,
nets, yeah, which is things like trash and all that,
property
property
taxes,
taxes,
and
things of that nature, and that's also responsible by you. I mean, that comes into your rent, so always take that into consideration. And sometimes the triple nets have been a deal breaker for some people. They can just get
yeah.
astronomical.
Depending on the city, some can be really high and some can be low. And the triple nets are not negotiable
Right,
typically. So when you're negotiating your rent cost, you're negotiating that base rent, but you need to account for that triple net. So you're going to take your base rent cost of, let's say it was $5 per square foot, and then your triple net, let's say that was another $5 per square foot. So your total would be $10 per square foot. So you would multiply that by your 1,000-foot unit. So you're looking at $1,000 per month, if that makes sense. So just I like to give that caveat here because a lot of people will negotiate their base rent, but then all of a sudden they're like, wait, why is it this much a month? Well, that's your triple net cost,
right,
right?
right.
So
Typically, your triple net is what? Maybe, I mean, from what we've seen, is it half of what your typical rent
oh
is,
gosh, it
or
ranges so
it
much. I
ranges a
mean,
ton, right?
yeah, it just really depends. But
But honestly, like the triple nets were high and were higher for good communities. Like
yeah,
Capel is a nice community. It's clean all the time. It's safe. It's this like you pay for what you get, and of course, I mean, it's funny because you pay sales tax on the top of it, but that's a different story.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So typically, when you are looking at a location, they will give you a starting point of your base rent. Like this is $25 per square foot base, but you can negotiate this. This
Right.
is negotiable. So you don't want to obviously come in crazy low, but especially if it's a popular space, they might just count you out. But you do want to attempt to negotiate here. Come down a couple dollars and say, here, this is where I want to start. And a lot of times you can also do this, have it increased by year. So your first year is, maybe $5 lower, and then the second year is 4, 3, 2, 1,
Right.
that kind of thing. So base rent is negotiable. That's what the key point here is, that you can negotiate this base rent, not necessarily your triple nets, but do try to negotiate your base rent. Don't just take what they give you. This isn't like a residential lease where it is what you get. This is a negotiable point.
But know what the comps are too, right? Hopefully you've looked at 4 or 5 places before you're in I mean, at this point you're in an LOI, right? I mean, letter of intent. So you have an intent to enter into negotiations and you're staring at a contract. So hopefully you've looked at 4 or 5 different places and you can say, and you can provide that comp to yourself and say, and then they're like, well, this is $10 a square foot. And you see the other place across town that's has, I don't know, new windows and this, that, and the other, and that's at $7. But you could use that. I mean, knowledge is power with all of this stuff. It really is. It really is. Should we go to three? Number three is going to be what? The additional costs. So not only what the base rent is, but also additional costs, such as utilities, maintenance, taxes, stuff like that. And you want to make sure that that's built in and divide and develop your actual cost of what it is you're going to be. So that's kind of one of the things, right?
Yeah.
We have the base rent, and then we have the triple nets. Then we have the additional costs. All of that comes out to the actual check amount that you are going to be stroking, and that is your rent.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, I mean, utilities, a lot of times like water and stuff like that, all of that's shared within the whole
Yeah.
unit, trash, things like that. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it ain't nothing,
Yeah,
right?
you want to understand how is water billed? Is this split up between all the units? Am I billed, by the meters that I use? Just ask these
Ask the
questions.
questions, yes.
Understand what your costs are. I hate when people are surprised when they get their first bill and they're like, "This is $300 more than I thought," just because they didn't read the dotted lines.
Right. Or if it sits there and says something, hey, additional costs or utilities or maintenance, and it says it and it's very vague in the contract, ask them what that is. Like, how much was that? Well, it's da da da. Well, what was it for the units the last 2 months? Or ask these questions and they should be able to provide all that.
Yeah,
But just the goal is to get you to not be blindsided by anything. It really
right,
is here.
right. Okay, number four, if you're multitasking, come back to me because this is the most important one probably on this entire list. This is one that not so many people don't know that they can ask for this, and it is so important to the success of your business in the first few months in the space. And this is rent abatement. So rent abatement is a time period where you occupy the space, but you don't have to pay rent. And this is so common, like landlords give this out because they know you're moving into the space, you need to paint, you might have an extensive build out, you're just starting out, you still need to get marketing out
Leave
there.
your equipment in there, or whatever.
You
Yeah.
need to get your sign on the door. So they'll basically help you offset this cost by saying, okay, you just have to pay the triple nets, you got to pay us taxes, but you don't have to pay that base rent cost. And this is typically anywhere from like 3 to 6 months, depending on how extensive your build out is. So ask for this. This is common. Landlords are used to giving this out. They're used to being asked for this, but if you don't ask for it, sometimes they don't bring it up, right?
Right.
So do not forget to ask this. And this is one that really can be used as a leverage on the duration of your lease. So,
Right.
if you're doing a 3-year lease, it's pretty common to get like 3 months of rent abatement. If you're doing a 5-year lease, it's common to ask for like 5 or 6, but ask for what you need. Take your build out plans into consideration. This is a huge one. It saved us so much. The first 3 months we were in our space, we didn't have to pay rent and it was awesome.
Right.
And we actually got our build out done within that first month, which was great. So then we were actually running cards, that second and third month, but we still weren't paying rent, which really allowed us to,
Get profitable. I mean,
yeah,
that was the
get
thing,
cash flow
right?
going.
Yeah, we had a lot of cash flow. Our whole goal is to spend money. I mean, we say this all the time in the first 90 days. You want to spend money on product and marketing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it. Just that's what you want to spend most of it on. That means you're running and you're doing business. It means you're definitely doing business. Number five is another one is tenant allowances, kind of along the same ilk, but tenant allowances, we call it TA. Those are payments to the lessor that makes uh, the lessor makes to the lessee to provide the tenant with funds to prepare the rented space for its intended business use for your build out. Really, they're just giving you money for your build out. And the reason why these are tied together, and I brought it up so quick without a huge transition here, was that a lot of the times they are tied together. You can get the rent abatement, or you can get or you can get a TA allowance, or and it really is just going to be based on your needs, your personal preference.
Mhm.
For me, being like we covered earlier, being mildly handy and can have some tools, I want as much free time as I possibly can.
Mhm.
I can, you know, they're going to want to use their people and this, that, and the other, and I want to get my own people in there. I want to do my own thing, and there's a lot of wiggle room for that there. But something also that is something to consider
Yeah.
when negotiating.
If you're moving into a new unit that hasn't been, nobody's been there yet, typically they might just have walls, but they won't have electricity and plumbing there yet.
It's like skeleton,
Yeah.
right?
So it's very common to get TA allowance for this for you to finish the build out of the space. But if you're coming into a unit that's older, it is a second generation unit that, you're going to need to replace the ceiling tiles and the floor. You know that you need to bust down some walls, then ask for it. Say, hey, we've got an extensive build out. We're going to need to switch around some plumbing in here. So we want some allowance to do some of these improvements that are going to improve upon the space. Typically, TA allowance is going to be $1 per square foot
Right.
again. So take that into consideration and, ask for, we want $3 per square foot. And just know that a lot of times these TA allowances, you will fund them up front and then you will send the receipts to the landlord and then they will reimburse you a
Right.
lot of times. So know that you might need that capital up front, but you can get reimbursed.
Right. This also is nice too if you have like somebody who is a contractor or kind of is in that game a little bit, so that, if you understand that this place is going to need $50,000 to do my dream build out, it's nice to know that
Yeah.
too, so you have at least a starting point. And once again, it's another point to leverage in negotiations. I'm going to keep coming back to it. Well, I know that you guys want X amount per square foot, but I got to put 50 grand into the build out and da 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 da. I don't know if this is necessarily, and you are playing that game.
And send them quotes. Send them this is a quote I got from my contractor for how much it's going to take me to do what I want to do.
Right.
When they see that in writing and you're not just throwing out numbers, then it gives you
Yeah, for sure. You want somebody that's going to be close. Oh, I need 100 grand to build. Like, no, like that's not going to work. But you want to be kind of like be the expert there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, moving on to number 6 is leasehold improvements. So some leases, some landlords require tenants to make leasehold improvements to the space. So consider if there are any improvements that you're going to be required to make. These can be negotiated. Just check the dotted lines in your lease. What all is required for you to do within your space and
What's something, for example, typically that I don't know that I've necessarily seen anything, but what is
like just the presentation of the space needs to be upkept to this level. Windows need to be kept up to this level.
Okay.
What are the leasehold that how do you need to represent the space according to the
okay
lease?
as a whole
Yeah.
being okay, that makes sense. Yes, I get that for sure. All right, so number 7 is going to be the options for renewal or expansion. So I know you're focused on getting your day one open, but you need to consider in 5 years whether the lease includes an option for renewal or expansion in the case that, the great case that you need more square footage. What does that look like? Are you going into a smaller space that you're already going to be busting at the guts at? But hey, look, guys, I see this going. It's just another conversation to be had. Something that maybe 5 years ago we should have talked a little bit more about, because
This is
we
what we're
are,
running into.
yeah, we're running into this big time.
We need more space, and it would have been we're talking to the landlord and, they're keeping an eye out for anybody that, moves out that has a bigger unit. But it's definitely a conversation to be had in the beginning. But that option for renewal, you want to know that in 5 years, you're going to be able to renew and stay there if you want to. You don't want to have them turn around and say, oh, well, in 5 years, we're actually moving in a different direction, or we're, selling the space, and that'll be, just ask these questions to make sure you got the long term.
Absolutely. And then number 8 is going to be the permitted use of the space. So this, you want to ensure that the space is suitable for your business's use and the future use. So this is a big one. We've seen some, not flack with this, but we've had conversations about this because we've grown, right? And sometimes you started a business and you think it's going to go this way, and it ends up being totally different.
Yeah.
When we started doing CBD, we saw a need. We had all this square footage and we saw a need. People were coming in for anxiety and pain. How else do we help? with that. And it got us into the services and the floats or whatever. And yes, it was a blessing in disguise, but these were conversations that need to be had.
Yeah.
I mean, these were people were like, wait, what? The landlord's like, what are you trying to do
Yeah, they're
here?
like, you now are having giant tanks of
Yeah,
water in the building, and people are coming in, and how are they're showering,
yeah,
they're like so confused. And obviously we didn't know those services that we were going to have at that time, but we knew that we wanted to do services. So like when we were negotiating that lease in the beginning, I wish we would have asked those questions from the beginning so it wasn't such a surprise. But yeah,
yeah. It's been kind of I mean, I don't know, it's a little inside baseball, but it's been kind of there's been a couple times it's been uncomfortable. And it's like, well,
yeah,
wait a second, guys. Like, we're trying to pay you your rent here.
yeah,
This is what's going to work. And a lot of times it's based off of the non-compete clause. They don't want to upset somebody else
yeah,
within the unit. But when it's not, it's not like it
yeah.
wasn't even that way. It was so,
It,
yeah,
like you said earlier, you got to think about it from the landlord's perspective. They want to know what's going on. They own these
right.
spaces. They want to make sure that nothing, illegal is going on, or, something,
Yeah.
sketchy or weird, or,
Or they're not liable towards
yeah,
anything, right?
right, right. Um, so yeah, just having those conversations. I've seen people that open up like kind of to-go cafes, and then all of a sudden they realize people want like more of a sit-down restaurant, but is that permitted for the use? That's a big difference there. Like, so just talk about your ideas and plans and say, okay, we're opening a coffee bar, but we do want to grow into a full-on restaurant in back here. Is that permitted in this space? Like,
Right.
what is going to be allowed here? Because you might be surprised landlords might have stipulations or thoughts and feelings on those
Yeah,
things.
some that you value and think is great, and others that you
Yeah.
not so much.
Or, we want to start out with this brand, but we may rebrand to
Yeah.
something
Oh,
else.
wow. Yeah. So I didn't
You
realize that
run
was that
into
big of a
that.
deal. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so with that being said, we'll just stick with the non-compete clause. That is number 9, non-compete clause. It's always a good idea to ask for one. And that's going to ensure that your landlord would not lease a space to a potential competitor. I mean, we've seen this.
It's
We've
huge.
seen this.
Yeah.
You got a CBD store going, and then they open a vape store, or the other way around, right? They got a CBD, the vape stores in the unit, or in the building, and then they're
Yeah.
letting you open a CBD. You're like, why are you
We've
doing
we've
that?
seen this all the time. And
Yeah,
when we went to sign our lease, the first time we just realized there was a bunch of permitted use clauses in there for all the other tenants. Like, cannot you do physical therapy for more than 50% of your primary
right.
income? And I'm like, what is this? And then I'm realizing, oh, these are all the other
Those are all
businesses
the
that
other
are in here.
businesses.
So ask them, say, I don't want anyone else with that you lease to in this shopping center, or whatever
Right.
unit, to be allowed to sell my primary product or service more than 50% of their revenue, or at all, so that will keep anybody from coming in and selling whatever your core product or service is. Exactly.
It's funny too because the landlord will play favorites on a lot of this too. Like if you're a big name, she's mentioning the physical therapy because that was one of them. It was a big name, big commercial with a recognized brand, and they wouldn't allow another tenant to do anything close. But the reason why is because they had spent, the
Brand
big brand
had a 10-year
had a 10-year
lease,
lease where the other guy
yeah,
was nickel and diming him at
yeah,
3 years. It was
yeah,
very so. But with that being said, if you are willing to sign or you're signing a 10-month or 10-year lease, you need to have these non-compete things for them
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Say, hey, I will sign 10 if I get blah, 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 blah. And there better not be anybody else that says it sells any other supplements or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So which this
And
this
get it
could
in
be
writing,
fluid
put it
and get
it
it right
needs to be in
in the
the
lease.
lease.
Yeah,
So
in the
don't just
lease.
go by their word of, yeah, no, like, like in our minds, we're like, it would be such a dumb idea, or dumb for them to add in another CBD store or another donut shop in the same shopping center. But some landlords don't care, so it's willing to sign a lease and pay rent. So get it in writing.
Yeah, it just depends on like that specific. We see now after being there for 5 years, some units go, some units stick, some don't. It's kind of funny, but we were there what 1 week, and then we turned to look, and the place that sold smoothies was selling CBD like
Yeah.
2 days later, and I was almost devastated. Like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
And
Coffee shop too.
yeah,
They started selling
they both started
CBD.
selling CBD.
I
It was
mean, it was such a small amount, but
yeah.
still.
Yeah, so
Learn our lesson. Okay, number 10 is parking. So this is something you can negotiate into your lease. So if you go by your potential location at varying times to evaluate the parking situation, you will see sometimes maybe it's super busy and there's nowhere for customers to park, and that's an issue. You don't want customers pulling up and getting frustrated they can't park and saying, screw it, I'm just going to go to this other location. So if you need a dedicated spot for customers, one or two spaces, or maybe more, then negotiate that into your lease. That way you can put a, official sign up in front of your business that says, we all see those signs, only for Float Capel customers.
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, yeah.
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
For sure.
Yep. All right. So parking is one that you can and should negotiate. Next is number 11, and this is one that, 3 years ago we would not have even put this on the list,
Right.
but we learned our
We
lesson.
ask now every time.
We learned our lesson. This is a natural disaster and pandemic clause. So we got really lucky throughout COVID, and our landlords at all the locations we were in actually came to us and said, hey, you only owe us 50% of your base rent for the next, I think some of them were 6 months, some were like 4 months, because of the pandemic and the local laws that were going out. So that allowed us to, stay in that space and do what we needed to do. But I know
But
a lot
they put
of
it off towards the other end, though. They just put it back. It wasn't free half rent,
some of them
though.
were.
Right, but typically what they did was they would put it off too, which was another thing. So be careful in the literature there as
Yeah.
well.
But what I was going to say is a lot of businesses were not so lucky. A lot of businesses were required to pay throughout. They did not get any discounts or, help assistance from their landlords. And if they would have had a clause like this would have saved them. This is something that we want in our leases now because we don't even want it to be a question. We just want to know, let's say a pandemic forces the city to shut down patrons walking into your business, or a tornado comes
Right.
through. If you are near somewhere where hurricanes happen, are you still liable for paying your lease if something happens? So you want to have
And
this
what does that
conversation.
look like,
Yes.
right? Of your I mean, is it defer? Let's get this out in the air now because it's not like you said before, 3-4 years ago, this was a non-issue, but now like you have to talk about at least
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And this is a clause that is written into leases, so it's not weird to ask for, what would that look like if something affects the performance of your business? What are you liable for? Have that conversation, get it in writing. Just give you the peace of mind that if anything happens, natural disaster or pandemic wise, you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, we actually saw a fair amount of, I thought businesses that were doing well take that opportunity and use that pandemic clause, use that natural disaster and pandemic clause to get out of their lease and go
Well,
somewhere else. I mean,
a lot of them, quite frankly, knew that they didn't have the cash flow to survive it. They
right.
knew that they weren't going to be able to pay even that 50% of their rent. And a lot of landlords just said, okay, if you're not going to be liable, we're not going to chase you down for the next 6 months, just leave.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure they still owed certain ways that we don't even know, but yeah, I mean,
But it was a conversation that was had and it was done beforehand so that it was very crystal clear. You
Yeah.
want to have transparency up in the beginning,
yeah.
for sure. And then number 12 is maintenance and repairs. With what you want to do is you want to understand the maintenance and repair responsibilities for you and the landlord, and make sure that they fit within your budget and capabilities. Who's responsible for what?
Yeah. If your AC goes out, who's paying for
Yeah,
it?
it's on you, Bubba.
Yeah, I mean, so like on this note, knowing that we would be responsible for the AC, we went and had somebody inspect it before. Is this thing going to crap out in 1 year, or is this going to last me 10 years? Because if it's already on a downhill, that's something you want to say, we'll move in this unit, but you got to replace the AC before I move in.
Right.
Or, whatever it may be, have all those little things looked at. There was a giant tree in front of our unit
Still
blocking
is.
the entire side. And we knew this thing needed to stay trimmed, so we had them put it in our lease. You are going to trim this tree. Now, I'll be honest with you, they haven't really been consistent. We still have to bug them about it, but it's in the lease, so we can hold them accountable to say, hey, this is in our lease and you haven't been doing it. So come out here and get the tree trimmed,
Get the
buddy.
darn tree. Per our lease,
Yeah.
dot.
So look at those things that may need to be maintained around you. Is there more trash than normal around the unit? Are they responsible for that? Make sure it's in the lease so you can hold them
Right.
accountable to it. What kinds of repairs do you foresee yourself doing in that unit? What are you responsible for? Are you changing the light bulb, or are
Yeah,
they
right.
replacing the, fire extinguisher? Are you doing that? Are you replacing the sprinkler
Whatever.
system? Whatever. All of it. Get down
Whatever.
into the nitty-gritty, ask those questions. Don't wait for them to pop up.
For sure. For sure. All right. Number 13, insurance requirements. What you want to do is you want to ensure that you understand the insurance requirements for the space so that you have the appropriate coverage. And they're just going to have it all laid out
Yeah,
for you.
they will tell you their requirements. Understand them. Go get some quotes so you know what that's going to look like for you. So you're not all the way through the process and realizing, dang, they've got some insane insurance
And that's
requirements.
going to cost me an additional $1,000 or whatever it is. At least
Okay.
know. At least know.
Number 14 is building and zoning codes. So ensure the space meets your building and zoning codes, sorry, and that any required permits or licenses are in place. So it doesn't hurt to go talk to your city as well when you're in this process. Are you going to be able to get a food license and permit? Is the city going to even approve your certificate of occupancy for this space? You want to be having these conversations with the building and zoning departments before you sign a lease.
Right.
So you can make sure that this area is zoned to do what you want to do at this unit.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is be going for a certificate of occupancy and find out that all of the wiring within the store or the unit has to be changed or something like that. And that would not be on you. I know we had a unit that they just did all the wiring for the HVAC and everything, and like this guy was walking into an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was. But luckily he was smart and sent some people to look at the HVAC, and it opened up this giant can of worms. So now somebody is on the hook for 12 grand just to get this
Yeah.
place, just to get them to accept,
Yeah.
just to get the city to approve the certificate of occupancy. And it's like, the tenant's not going to front that. I
Yeah.
mean, the space should have a certain base level, right? Before it should have a certain level like that, at least, like, one of which is the electricity is safe and functioning.
Yeah. A lot of city building permit departments will come and do like a complimentary, I would say not complimentary, but an inspection
Precursor,
just so that you can get an idea of what the needs are going to be at that space. So take advantage of that and have them come out, tell you what the needs are before you sign the dotted line on that lease so that you can ask for anything that you may need.
Even like, I know we were the kings of the $250 HVAC inspection thing too. It's like we would just pay some professional and we didn't go through their people. Well, my guy came in here. No. I don't want to hear that. You want your own guy, pay them, a couple $100. Hey man, take a look at this place and tell me what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 15 is the landlord's right to entry. This is just one to be aware of. I've never had to worry about it at spaces, but I've heard other people have. So understand the landlord's right to enter your space. If it's unreasonable, make sure it's not going to disrupt your business operations. Can they just walk into your unit in the middle of the night? Just want to kind of know what's going on there. Most spaces are pretty professional when it comes to that, but we've heard some
better to be upfront.
So,
it is better to be upfront with it for sure. And then finally, number 16 is the termination clauses. So with this, you just want to understand what the termination clauses are in the lease, including any penalties or fees associated with an early termination or something like that.
Have that unfortunate, going out of business. What are you liable for?
Yeah.
And, this is where I'm going to circle back to. If this is in your personal name, understand that, that is going to affect your personal credit and future, leasing abilities. So, always push for getting it in your business name. But sometimes I know you can't always do that
Right.
if you're brand new in business. They'll want a personal guarantee, but understand what that is going to look like. I know when you're first getting in business, you're like, this is going to be a wild success and,
Right.
I'm never going to fail, but you just ask the questions. I don't want you to go in with the mindset that you're going to fail, but I want you to understand the risks that you're taking.
Well, don't even think of it as that negatively either. Think of it, it's going to be such a wild success that I'm going to sell this thing for $10 million. What happens when I want to come off of this lease because I made all this money? And that's something that happened with us at our one store. They would not let us off the lease. We
Yeah.
had a buyer. They were approved. They were this, they were that. And they were
Yeah.
simply a sublease. I mean, and we,
So
to
we had
this
the
day, we have to, we're still on that
Yeah, we
lease.
had to stay as a guarantor, even though they had outright bought the business from us. I think that that's coming up to an end here in a couple
Yeah.
months, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a great point, though. Ask those questions. If I sell this space, am I able to pass off this lease? What does that look like? So that's a question that we should have asked from the beginning.
For sure. Uh-huh.
Last point I'll say before we recap here is it never hurts to have a legal team review your lease. Now, a lot of these things, they aren't necessarily offering you guidance on what to negotiate in the lease, but they can help you understand that fine print. So send it off to somebody. They might point something out that was some legal verbiage that helps you comprehend that. So,
Well, just protect you.
yeah,
That's the whole idea.
always a good idea. But let's recap here, Kyle. You want to do that for
Sure.
us?
Number one, length of the lease, right? Number two is going to be the base rent. Three, any additional costs, right? Such as utilities, maintenance, things like that. Rent abatement. Rent abatement is my favorite. That's 3 to 5 months-ish on the front end of the lease to offset the rebuild or the build out, as we like to call it. And then five, which kind of goes along with that, is tenant allowances. Tenant allowances is money in the form of rent credits to finance or to purchase and make that build out happen. Number six, lease improvements required. Some leases require that tenants, but you hold the different improvements that are you in charge of maintaining the grass, whatever the case may be. But that's one thing definitely to consider. Number seven, options for a renewal or expansion. Think long term here. Think, best case scenario. It's good to have these conversations now as opposed to at the time when you need it. Eight is going to be permitted use of the space as your business evolves. Maybe that space needs to evolve as well. It's good to kind of at least touch on that before. Nine is going to be a non-compete clause, not only for you, but also for your landlord. Are you going to move in a direct competitor 2 doors down from me? Let's talk about that and make sure that that does not happen. Number 10, parking. A big thing for me is I watch people outside of as I'm sitting inside watching them park back and forth there. You want to make sure we have significant parking and that it works for you, that when you are busy, your customers to have a place to park and have a place to come in. Number 11, natural disasters and pandemic clause. Like we said, 3 years ago, would not really be talking about this, but now that is key. Have the conversations now. Get those details ironed out immediately. 12, maintenance and repairs. Who's responsible for what? That's just how it is, right? That's just you. They're responsible for X, Y, and Z. You have everything else. Number 13 is insurance requirements. You want to make sure that you have budgeted correctly and that you are, getting everything that making the landlord happy with insurance, and you want to make sure that you have that correctly. Number 14 is going to be building and zoning codes. Ensure that the space meets all the building and zoning codes, that there's no crazy licenses or anything like that. 15, landlord's right of entry. We don't want them showing up in their underwear with a nice, when you're super busy and all that stuff. It's just nice to have that out. And then number 16, termination clauses. Hopefully you made $1 billion zillion and you're looking to cash out. what does that look like? Or if you have to get out of that lease. And that's the 16 things to look for on those leases,
Yeah.
Jojo.
If you didn't write these down, I'm going to put a link to the blog post where we outline all of this for you in the show notes. You can find those at masterbrickandmortar.com/26. So you can print these out, save them for your records. If you want more help, if you're in the location search process and you want some more guidance and more of what to do when you're looking for a location or building out your location or opening the doors of your business, and what not to do if you want to avoid those costly mistakes and headaches that we made and learned from people who have gone through it before you. We would love to see you inside of Brick-and-Mortar Academy. We have the doors open for Brick-and-Mortar Academy. It is our program where we guide you through everything you need to know about opening a brick-and-mortar business, from location to marketing to build out to systems and processes to your grand opening. We cover it all, and you get to join our community where you get personal access to us to ask us questions. Visit the show notes to find out more and join us inside of the Academy, masterbrickandmortar.com/26. We hope you enjoyed this one. It's such an important topic, and I hope you really take the time to go through your lease instead of just jumping in. This will set you up for long-term success. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it's certainly not the most exciting thing in the world to do, but I think overall it's important to just have these conversations now as opposed to having, something jump up and bite you in the butt a year or two later when the pressure's on and you need this to happen. So it's just nice that it's clear. It'll save you time, save you a headache in the end.
All right. Good luck, everyone. And you can always message us as always, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Receipt Paper Podcast, your go-to source of information for starting and growing a successful brick-and-mortar business. Subscribe to hear future episodes and share this content so that more people can access these valuable insights. If you're looking for more resources to help you with your brick-and-mortar business, visit masterbrickandmortar.com or follow us on Instagram at masterbrickandmortar. Thanks again for listening to the Receipt Paper Podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.